Hey guys, this is God of Politics, and welcome back to a brand new video. In this video, I'm going to be doing another election prediction, and this election prediction is for Bernie Sanders versus Donald Trump. I've assumed that Bernie Sanders will pick Nina Turner as his running mate, and Donald Trump with Mike Pence as his running mate, of course. And we're going to be doing the election prediction based on that. Obviously, I don't think Bernie Sanders is going to get the nomination. I think there's almost 0% chance that he actually does it, but maybe somehow if he does really well in the debate and overperforms, maybe wins Ohio and Arizona, which obviously I don't think is going to happen. I think it's almost impossible for that to happen. But maybe if something crazy does happen and he becomes the nominee, the DNC probably won't let him. But if he does become the nominee, then we will see what happens. And this is my prediction if that does happen and he is the candidate. So first will be the safe states as always. We're going to do all of these states. North Dakota, South Dakota, all of Nebraska except for the second district. Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas would also be safe. Louisiana, Arkansas, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, South Carolina, Kentucky, Indiana, Iowa would also be safe. Missouri would be safe. Also, Ohio and West Virginia would also be safe. Bernie's, even if you pick Nina Turner as his nominee, who is from Ohio, Bernie would not be able to do well in the Rust Belt states by saying that he's going to completely change the economy, even if the economy is not doing too well, by saying that he's going to use all these spending tactics to try and get himself out of the recession on top of all his Medicare for all, free college, all that stuff. It is not going to bode well for him. And so Donald Trump will get 188 as well as main second district, 188 safe electoral votes, and Bernie Sanders would get all these states down here: Hawaii, Illinois, New York, Vermont, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut, New Jersey, Delaware, Maryland, D.C. Some people are saying some of these states could be closer, but I'm just going to assume that they're going to be safe for now because we don't have too much information on these states. That is 188 safe electoral votes for Donald Trump and Mike Pence, and 182 safe electoral votes for Bernie Sanders and Nina Turner. So we'll start off on the West Coast here. I think Nevada would be tilt blue. You see that Bernie Sanders has been able to turn out Latino voters. He hasn't done too well with the turnout. He says that he's going to get all these young people to turn out to get the highest voter turnout in history to account for all the losses in vote that he's going to get amongst older voters. But we have not seen that so far. But what we have seen is that Latino voters have been consolidated around Bernie Sanders. They have been flocking to him in large numbers where they went to Hillary Clinton last time, and that will help him in a state like Nevada. You would think it would help him in a state like Arizona, but no, it will not. Trump will win Arizona by a similar margin to what he did last time, bucking the trends that trended towards Hillary Clinton in a year that trended almost away from the Democrats in almost every single state except for states like Texas and Georgia, which we'll talk about in a second. But in terms of Arizona, you'd think that Bernie would do well because of the Latino vote, but you'll see that the religious vote in places like Maricopa County and the Mormon vote, which actually makes up 5% of the population, Bernie Sanders will not do very well with those voters. Next, we'll go down here to New Mexico. New Mexico would be lean, as well as Colorado will be lean. Bernie Sanders actually does well in states like Colorado, I guess because they're socially liberal, things like that. Bernie Sanders gets the Latino vote as well there, as well as in states like New Mexico. But you could argue that Trump's policies, his economic policies, have helped people in states like New Mexico. And even with the economic downturn that we have, he can still flaunt the job numbers, the manufacturing growth in states like New Mexico, as well as Bernie Sanders' policies just not being popular enough across the board. You see, amongst Democrats, they're only about 55% support in a lot of states that you're going to need to win in states like Michigan, Minnesota, states that he both lost almost every single county in. And that's going to be a big challenge for him to overcome because, sure, he has a consolidated and very loud base, but how can he expand on it? And that's what you'll see in states like Colorado and New Mexico. He'll have the base that can get him just over the top, but he won't really be able to expand on that. So next, Nebraska's second issue. We'll put it at a likely margin. This should have been a flip for the Democrats back in 2018, but the Democrats ran somebody who is like Bernie Sanders, and that's what lost them the seat. And if it's not a wave year, which 2020 I assume is not going to be unless there's a bad economic recession, is going to be a likely margin. Nebraska's second district. Going up to Minnesota here, I think Minnesota would actually tilt red due to the fact that Bernie Sanders, everybody thought he would do really well here in the primary, but when he had all this attention coming on him, all this heat and attacks coming onto him, he could not perform, and he lost his seat in Minnesota against all odds to Joe Biden. And sure, you could say the voters like the policies. They like the policies of people like Ilhan Omar, who they elected. But I think in terms of a statewide race, they'd prefer somebody like Amy Klobuchar. And sure, the state has not gone red since 1984 or something like that. 1984 was the last time it went red. That doesn't mean it won't go this time. If you have somebody like this, like Bernie Sanders, you might have a similar situation to what you saw in 1972 with George McGovern losing almost every single state to Richard Nixon because he was too left wing. And that's what I think you'll see with Bernie Sanders as well. We'll go down to the South here. I think Georgia would go by a likely margin. I think Nina Turner being black might help her and Bernie Sanders' cause a little bit, maybe being able to turn out some of the vote. But you see that the black voters are the ones that saved the Democratic Party becoming a socialist party in states like South Carolina, North Carolina, Virginia, Michigan, all of these states that effectively saved the Democrats from nominating Bernie Sanders. And they've shown that they do not trust Bernie Sanders. They will not turn out for Bernie Sanders. And in a state like Georgia, even when Nina Turner is a running mate, they won't be able to turn out the black voters, and they won't be able to get the trends that have been seen in this state. Florida, I believe, would go by a likely margin because Bernie Sanders has turned off all of the Cuban Americans, the Puerto Rican Americans, whatever, Nicaragua, Chile, all the Latin American people, because sure he can turn out Latino voters that have been here for a couple generations and may speak English already, but he cannot turn out the voters that are first generation immigrants from communist countries like Cuba. Because when he praises Fidel Castro, he's going to lose their vote, and he's going to lose the vote in all of the people around that. He won't do as well in the Palm Beach County, Broward County, all those areas, and he won't do as well in the Panhandle as Biden would because he's lost his grasp on the rural voters that Biden has now taken from him, that Bernie Sanders no longer has support amongst. Going up here to North Carolina, I think that Donald Trump would expand his lead in the state of North Carolina. We have seen that in 2016, Donald Trump won the state by 5 points, and we've seen in the polls now that Biden is up by around 3.5% in North Carolina polls, but Bernie is still losing in the North Carolina polls, and the polls are skewed left, so you're assuming that the polls would be a lot more right-wing, and when they start attacking Bernie, the right wing hasn't even barely even started attacking Bernie Sanders yet, but when they do start attacking Bernie, they're going to notice a lot of heat for it, and that is going to be reflected in a state like North Carolina, which will go by a likely margin to Donald Trump. Next, we'll go down here to the state of Virginia. I think Virginia would be a lean margin. I'm not ready to say that this actually, I'll put it at a tilt margin. I'm not ready to say that this state will flip yet. It flipped blue for the first time in 2008 to a left-wing candidate, Barack Obama, who was considered very left-wing at the time. But now Bernie is anti-establishment. He won't do well in the Fairfax counties and those areas up in the north. And Bernie Sanders has not consolidated the rural vote either. He won about 2 counties here in Virginia on Super Tuesday, and that's going to be to his detriment, but he will still narrowly win the state. We'll go up here to the northeast. I think Maine's first district would go likely, therefore Maine at large going tilt to Donald Trump. People say, oh, Bernie Sanders is from the northeast, he'll do very well here. In his home state of Vermont, he barely even cracked 50%. Biden did well in states like that are almost on the other side of the country and not demographically favorable to him in many situations. Then those states did better for Biden than Bernie did in Vermont. And I think you'll see that when we predict, then I predict that New Hampshire is going to go tilt. Um, the voters will respond to Bernie Sanders' plans that they deem to be crazy and won't work. And that's going to hurt him in Maine, it's going to hurt him in New Hampshire, and that's going to give him losses in the state, despite the fact that he is from the Northeast. And we see Donald Trump is already at 276 electoral votes. We'll finally get to these last 3 Rust Belt states here. Pennsylvania would go lean, Michigan would go tilt, and Wisconsin would go lean. Bernie Sanders seems to be doing well in Michigan and Wisconsin, whereas Biden isn't doing very well in Wisconsin, but he is not going to do well in Wisconsin. He'd only make it to Michigan a tilt margin because it is traditionally a more Democratic state, but when you're running on things like getting rid of fracking, that is going to kill the local economy in states like Pennsylvania more than it's already been killed by, we could argue, this economic downturn that we're seeing. And so despite the fact that there might be a bad economic situation that Donald Trump might not be able to run, he can just say, oh, Bernie Sanders is going to completely change your economy. He's going to take away your health care, make you pay for other people's taxes, make you pay for illegal immigrants' health care, and illegal immigrants' abortions and whatever. That is going to hurt Bernie Sanders' cause, especially in states like the Rust Belt. And Bernie Sanders' attacks on Joe Biden, oh, he voted for the trade deals, he voted for NAFTA, he voted for all this stuff, that didn't hurt Biden. Biden was able to win these states by larger margins. And I think with an economic situation like this, if this continues to the election, Biden would be able to win the Rust Belt states, but even Bernie would not. Even with that situation, that That is the nature of Bernie's plans. They are not winnable plans. Sure, he can get an excited base around those plans, but he can't really expand much on that, and that is going to be to his detriment when he loses the Electoral College 322 to 216 by a larger margin than what Hillary Clinton lost in 2016. This might shut up the far left wing of the Democratic Party and put them to sleep for good, and they might even join the Republican Party, and that would be very interesting to see. But yeah, this is my prediction for if Bernie Sanders is nominee. I don't think it's actually going to happen, but if it was, this is my prediction. So yeah, thank you all for watching. Please like and subscribe as always, and I will see you guys later.